It's so heartbreaking. I don't even know what to do.
Not ever in my life will I ever get over this. I will never get over somebody doing this to my...
She didn't deserve this. She really didn't.
You will reap what you sow in prison, I'm sure of that. Prison does not forgive like things like you. You have to watch your back every second, every minute, every hour of every day for the rest of your life. Evil is being sentenced here today, and that evil is you.
Amara was barefoot, bleeding, and begging for her husband to spare her life, and somebody in that apartment building picked up the phone and called 911 while it was happening. The day before all this same woman had buried her baby boy, and by the time the sun came up, she and both of her little girls were gone. Before we get into Jerica's story, let's start with this story.
He didn't start doing any of this until after he grabbed the gun. And this is the second, he said 2 times, asked me, am I willing to lose my life? And I don't like that.
That is not an actress, and that is not a reenactment. That is a real woman standing on her own porch at 2 in the morning, talking into a police body camera, telling 2 officers in plain English that the man inside her house has a gun and has already asked her twice if she is ready to die.
This is body cam footage of Aisha Nelson describing the words and actions of her boyfriend, 31-year-old Dante Hawes, and insisting to police that she was uncomfortable before he then killed her, her daughter, and then himself.
Her name was Aisha Nelson. She was 31 years old and she lived on Burley Avenue in Dayton, Ohio, with her 6-year-old daughter, Harper Gwynn. To understand how bad this gets, you have to know a few things about her. Aisha was not an Ohio girl. She was from Newark, New Jersey, raised right across the water from New York, and her family says she was born and raised by her grandmother along with her sisters, one of whom was her twin. She served in the Navy, and that detail is going to come back around in a minute. But the most important thing about her life in Dayton is the thing nobody talks about. She was completely alone out there. Court records say she had no friends and family in the area, meaning no auntie down the block, cousin with a spare couch, or anyone to run to at 2 in the morning with a sleepy 6-year-old on her hip. So when people ask why she didn't just leave, the answer is sitting right there in the paperwork. There was nowhere to go. The man in that house was Waverly Rashad Hawes, 32 years old, and everybody called him Dante. He was not some stranger she met online last month. On the body camera footage, Hawes tells the officer himself that he and Aisha had known each other for about 12 years, that they were friends long before they ever started dating, and that they met while they were both in the Navy. On paper, Hawes was clean, with no real criminal history, which is exactly why he never showed up on anybody's radar as a threat. He also had a child of his own, a 9-year-old daughter who was in that same house on the night everything went down. So when we talk about kids under that roof, we are talking about 2 of them sleeping upstairs while a grown man sits in the basement with a loaded gun. Now let's walk the days, because the timeline is what is going to make your chest tight. On the evening of June 22, 2022, Aisha started calling for help and did not call once. Court records and news reporting show she contacted dispatch multiple times, with reports consistently describing 3 calls across that period, and told them plainly that Hawes had threatened her life. She was smart about it too, because she did not ask the police to pull up to the house and blow her spot. Instead, she asked the dispatcher to have officers meet her at a nearby store, so she would not arouse Hawes' suspicions. She was a grown woman calculating that a police car in her own driveway might be the thing that got her killed, so she set up a secret meeting like she was the one doing something wrong. She went and waited in her car, late at night, with her little girl in the back seat, and nobody came. She called back and told them she had seen several police cars, but none of them stopped, and eventually, with the hour getting later and her daughter tired, she gave up and told dispatch she was going home and would make a report in the morning. She drove back to that house because there was nowhere else in the world for her to go. Then came June 23rd, around 2 in the morning, and here is the ugly irony of the whole thing. The police finally did show up at 337 Burley Avenue, but they did not show up for Aisha. They showed up because Hawes called them, saying he wanted Aisha to leave because she was tearing the place up. Officers Catherine Santos and Terrell Moore responded and split the parties up the way officers usually do, with Moore going inside and down to the basement with Hawes, while Santos stayed on the porch with Aisha. Every bit of what happened next was recorded, and that is the only reason the world knows any of it. Out on that porch, Aisha laid her whole life out for a stranger in a uniform. She told Santos that Hawes had taken the gun she'd bought for home security and threatened her with it. Then she explained why she could not simply walk out the front door, telling him he had cut up her credit cards and emptied the accounts and left her with nothing. In her own words on that body camera, she said, "I'm not leaving because you're not going to leave me with nothing. You made it to where I can't get a credit card, to where I can't go to a hotel. I'm not getting out." She also described exactly what he was doing right at that moment downstairs while everybody stood around talking. She said, "He's like a lion in a concrete jungle in here, but it's like he locked himself in that basement. He's down in that basement with his gun, rocking in a recliner back and forth." And she didn't just say it, she proved it, because Aisha pulled out her phone and played the officers a video she had recorded of Hawes. In that body cam recording, Hawes tells her, "You need to get out of my house." She tells him she's not going anywhere, and he comes back with this, "I bet you are. It's either that or the alternative. You don't want it." Everybody standing on that porch understood what the alternative meant, and she told them straight up why she was even doing all this, saying, "I just called the police because I'm letting y'all know if he gets anybody to walk through this door and jump on me, I'm going to defend myself to the end." She was documenting her own murder before it happened, and she was right about all of it. So what did the officers do with all that? They stepped away from her and talked amongst themselves, and that little conversation is the thing that changed everything. Santos said charging him would be a stretch. We could articulate it as domestic threats and take him to jail, and Moore came back with, "I don't think it's threats." Then Santos said the sentence the family will be hearing in their sleep for the rest of their lives. She obviously doesn't believe it. She doesn't believe it or she would not still be here, sitting in the same house with her kid. But she was still there because he had taken all her money, and she had told them in plain words only minutes before. So they took the very thing that trapped her and turned it into proof she was not really in danger. The officers ran both names, found no significant criminal records for either of them, mentioned a women's shelter and the YWCA, and told Aisha she could come file a report in the morning. Officer Moore's actual advice to Hawes was that he could start the eviction process, though he admitted it was a slow process, which means the plan on the table was paperwork, court dates, and months of waiting. And when Aisha explained that she had no money and nowhere to go, the response she got back was described in reporting as along the lines of, "Where there's a will, there's a way." But she did not have months. Aisha had about 60 minutes. Hawes agreed to just stay downstairs, and the officers got in their car and drove away. The officers rolled off Buries Avenue around 2:35 in the morning, and somewhere in the window between 3 and 4 in the morning, Waverly Hawes shot Aisha Nelson and 6-year-old Harper Gwynn in the basement of that house, the same basement Aisha had just finished describing to a police officer. The thing that supposedly set it off, according to reporting, was the same petty argument they had been going back and forth about all night, because an argument over the PlayStation escalated that morning. Hayes had told police Aisha hid his PlayStation 5, so the officers wrote the whole thing up like a roommate dispute, and a few hours later, a first grader was dead in a basement. But we all know it was never about a game console, because Aisha told them exactly what it was about. The PlayStation was just the last excuse he needed.
Well, a woman and a young girl were found dead in a Dayton home earlier today.
Dayton police are calling this a double homicide and are investigating what led to their deaths.
May have caused their deaths.
Regional dispatch.
I need somebody to come over and do a wellness check.
The first sign of concern came from a call to regional dispatch. A worried caller unable to find his family at a home on Buries Avenue in Dayton.
Do you think something happened?
I'm not sure. I just opened the door and just screamed everybody's name. No one's answering.
Dayton police responded just before noon. That's when they found a woman and young girl dead inside the home. Major Jason Hall says DPD's homicide unit was immediately called in, and police believe a firearm was involved.
It's not common that a welfare check results in this type of situation.
The 911 caller told the dispatcher there may have been an argument at the Buries Avenue home the night before.
My granddaughter said the police were here last night, so that's why I'm worried.
The dispatcher says police were called to that address. Hall says DPD will be checking into any prior calls to the house.
We are in the initial stages. Once again, that will be part of the investigation into what has what had occurred in this tragic incident.
It's sad to come home and see this.
One neighbor says while he didn't know the people who lived there very well, they were quiet.
I might have expected it somewhere else, but not like literally right across the street, and not from them.
Then he ran, though not for long. Dayton police worked the scene as a double homicide and had his name almost immediately because Aisha had already handed them everything they needed to find him. They pinged the GPS on his vehicle and it took them out of Ohio and down south, all the way into Alabama, where they found the car near Buster Road off the Interstate 65 exit in Falkville. Hawes was inside it, and the Morgan County coroner determined he had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, having already been dead for some time by the time they reached him. So understand what that means for this story. There is no trial here, no perp walk, no jury, no verdict, because nobody ever got to look Waverly Hawes in his eyes in a courtroom and ask him why. He killed a woman, he killed a 6-year-old, and then he took himself off the board, which left only 2 people to hold accountable, and those 2 people were the officers who stood on that porch and drove away. That fight took years. The body camera footage was released to the public in early July of 2022, a couple of weeks after the murders, and when the family finally watched it, they saw something the department apparently did not. Aisha's mother, Keely Nelson, described that footage as a cry for help, and she also said, "All I know is that my daughter and my granddaughter were killed. That's it. They were shot. I know nothing else." Her sister, Tangia, put it even bluntler, saying police didn't do their job, and now Aisha and Harper are gone. Then came the internal investigation, and this is the part that is going to have you typing in the comments, so let me just give it to you plain.
And welcome to 2 News First at 4. We start with the family filing a lawsuit against the Dayton Police Department and the city of Dayton after a mother and daughter were killed earlier this year.
Today, that family is speaking out about why they're filing a wrongful death complaint.
It could have been prevented, but it wasn't. So now we're here, and it's unacceptable.
This is video of the scene on Buries Avenue in Dayton the afternoon of June 23rd. Police found 31-year-old Aisha Nelson and her 6-year-old daughter Harper Ginn dead inside. Investigators identified Nelson's boyfriend, Dante Hawes, as the suspect, who was later found dead in Alabama from an apparent self-inflicted gunshot. Robert Gresham, the attorney representing Nelson's family, says prior to their deaths, Aisha made multiple calls to the Dayton Police Department for help before 2 officers arrived.
After only 30 minutes of talking to Aisha and Mr. Hawes' officers, made no decisions and simply left the location.
Gresham says less than an hour after police left, Aisha and Harper were dead. Gresham says the laws and policies in place when responding to a domestic violence call failed Aisha Nelson and Harper Ginn.
Even the bare minimum would have resulted in all parties still being alive here. All these officers had to do was do their job.
Their family filed a wrongful death claim against the city of Dayton, Dayton Police Department, and the 2 officers who responded. Aisha's mother and sister are calling for answers, accountability, and justice.
If the cops would have did their job, not only would Asian Harper be alive, but Dante would have been alive too. We need justice because I wouldn't want nobody else to have to go through this.
Well, first at 10, it's been more than 6 months since Aisha Nelson called police to say her ex-boyfriend was threatening to kill her.
He followed through on those threats, and now an internal investigation blames in part 2 Dayton police officers' response to Nelson's calls for help.
And actions of her boyfriend, 31-year-old Dante Hawes, and insisting to police that she was uncomfortable before he then killed her, her daughter, and then himself. The altercation started on June 22nd, and DPD officers did not respond to Nelson's calls until about 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd. Despite her pleas, officers left after 30 minutes and did not file a police report, despite Nelson telling them that Hawes had a gun. And an hour later, both 31-year-old Aisha Nelson and her 6-year-old daughter Harper Gwen were shot to death. After a month-long investigation, DPD released a statement saying officers Terrell Moore and Catherine Santos have been suspended for 160 hours and have received written reprimands and are required to attend additional training, but the family attorney says that just isn't enough.
2 lives were lost, and we're saying that a 30-day suspension is warranted and some retraining. What needs to happen is immediate termination and retraining of the entire Dayton Police Department.
Aisha was a Navy veteran, born and raised by her grandmother in New Jersey along with her sisters. One of the reasons Aisha had no place to turn to the night she was murdered. And her twin sister Ajala, who spoke exclusively to 2 News, says a big piece of her is forever gone.
I really get stuck sometimes. Like, I can't believe that my sister is not here. And then me being her twin sister is like, I'm just broken.
160 hours, a written reprimand, and some extra training. And that was the exchange rate for 2 lives. The family's attorney, Michael Wright, was not accepting that at all. And her twin sister, Ajala, spoke about what this actually cost, not in legal terms, but in the only terms that really matter. When the money conversation came up, her answer shut it down completely, because her twins said she doesn't want a penny out of this situation, because nothing can bring her sister back. All she wanted was for those officers to be held accountable. So the family took it to court. Patricia Wilkinson, the appointed administrator of the estates of both Aisha Nelson and Harper Gwynn, filed suit in December of 2022 in Montgomery County Common Pleas Court, bringing claims for wrongful death, survivorship, and dereliction of duty by the officers. The argument was simple. Aisha told them she was in danger, showed them the receipts, and they left anyway. Their other attorney, Robert Gresham, broke those 30 minutes down as plainly as it can be said. Notice he said all parties, and he meant that literally, because the family went on record saying that if police had done their job, 3 people would still be breathing, including the man who pulled the trigger. The city and the police department had nothing to say about any of it. And then the courts did what courts do. In May of 2023, the trial court threw the whole case out, and not because the judge decided the events did not happen the way the family said, since he accepted all of it as true for the sake of argument. The case died on a technical point about duty, with the court holding that there was no special relationship creating a duty for officers to protect Nelson and Gwynn from a third party, and no legal mandate requiring them to arrest Hawes on those facts. The department's own policy for domestic calls, General Order 2.01-2, was treated as preferred and discretionary rather than mandatory, which, translated out of court language, means the police did not have to help her and were allowed to leave. In January of 2024, the 2nd District Court of Appeals agreed with all of that, unanimously, and affirmed the dismissal. The family has since pushed the fight into federal court in the Southern District of Ohio, with appellate references showing up in the 6th Circuit as recently as early 2026. So this is not fully finished, but so far, every door has closed in their faces. That is the first story, and it belongs to a woman who did everything right. Hold that in your mind, because the next one is going to feel like the same movie with different actors. Different city, different man, different police department, same phone call, same ending. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, February of 2020. Her name was Amara Jerica Banks, and she was 26 years old, and everybody who loved her called her Jerica. Jerica was born March 14, 1993, in Milwaukee, and stayed a Milwaukee girl her whole life. She graduated from the Milwaukee High School of the Arts with honors. She was a violinist who loved classical music, and one of her favorite things in this world was sitting with her older brother David listening to Yo-Yo Ma. She worked at Froedtert Hospital, one of the big health systems in the city, but her obituary says it plain that the focus of her life was her children, and there were 3 of them. There was Zanaya Rose Ivory, born August 3, 2014, who was 5. Camaria Banks, born October 7, 2015, who was 4. And Arzel J.J. Ivory Jr., born April 1, 2018, who was 21 months old. The whole neighborhood knew those little girls. Now her partner, Arzel Ivory, was 25 years old. He was Jerica's on and off boyfriend. He was the father of Zanaya and the baby boy. And he worked as a security guard, which means he was paid to protect people. On paper, he looked spotless and had no prior criminal convictions. However, her family tells a completely different story, and they told it to reporters within days of her death.
Smith and others in Banks's family tell me Ivory had a history of violence.
It happened like every day when Jerica got off of work, every day. It's like every day, every other day, every day. He used to beat on my sister.
Did she ever report him to police?
I don't know.
What about the kids? Did he ever hit the kids?
Yes, he hit Kamara. He gave Kamara's niece a black eye.
He gave a 4-year-old a black eye. And when reporters went hunting for the paper trail on all of this, here is the number that came back. Deeper reporting later showed there actually had been a 2018 domestic violence arrest involving Ivory and Banks, but prosecutors never filed charges. So the man got arrested for putting his hands on her, and the system let the whole thing evaporate. That is exactly how somebody who allegedly beat a woman every other day for years ends up walking into a courtroom in 2021 with a clean record behind his name. Now we get to January of 2020, which is where this family broke apart long before anybody laid a hand on anybody. Baby Arzel Jr., the 21-month-old, had had asthma his whole life and was treated with nebulizers and albuterol, and Jerica watched that boy like a hawk. For a week or two before, his wheezing and gasping had been getting worse, and he was even scheduled for surgery on February 25th to take out his tonsils and adenoids to help with it. He never made it to that surgery. On January 24th, 2020, Ivory was the one at home with the boy while Jerica was at work. Ivory had been staying at Jerica's place after his own apartment burned in a fire. The daycare turned the baby away that morning because he was too sick, so the child was with Ivory all day. He slept through the afternoon, wheezing and gasping, which got even worse whenever he was asleep. Around 3 in the afternoon, Ivory tried to wake him up to go get the girls from school and heard him making slow gasping sounds, and he put that baby in the car anyway. By the time they reached the school, the boy was slumped against the car door, and the school principal took one look at him and said, "Get that child to a hospital right now." Instead of driving straight there, he stopped to buy the girls snacks first, and by the time they finally pulled up to Columbia St. Mary's, the baby had stopped breathing, and the nurse could not find a pulse. The Milwaukee County Medical Examiner ruled the cause of death as viral bronchitis and bronchiolitis, and the manner as accidental. So legally, that was the end of the conversation. But Jerica and her people never saw it as an accident and blamed him for waiting to get medical care, which, when you lay that timeline out, is not hard to understand at all. Then came February 7th, 2020, a Friday, and they buried the 21-month-old Arzel Jr. that day in Milwaukee. The family gathered afterward the way families do. And late that night, a relative drove Jerica and her 2 daughters home, arriving after midnight, and watched all 3 of them walk into the apartment building. That relative was the last person outside those walls to see them alive. Arzel Ivory was not at that family gathering because he worked his security guard shift on the night of his own son's funeral, and that was the thing Jerica could not get past. He came back to her apartment around 1:30 in the morning, and the argument started almost the second he walked through the door. By his own account to police, she blamed him for their son's death and told him she could not even look at him because he reminded her of the boy. And then the walls started shaking. A neighbor was woken up by 3 or 4 thumping sounds against the shared wall, then heard a woman screaming, "No, no, I didn't even do anything," while a man yelled and accused her of cheating. Another neighbor looked out of a window and saw something they would never forget, which was Jerica running through the parking lot with no shoes on, wearing a white memorial t-shirt with her dead son's face on it, bleeding from the mouth, before a man grabbed her and dragged her back inside. She was still wearing the shirt from her baby's funeral, and both of those neighbors heard her scream the same 3 words.
So it states that a neighbor told police that in the early morning,
of February the 8th, she saw Amara Jerica Banks, 26, running through the parking lot of the apartment building where she and her ex lived. Banks had no shoes on and was bleeding from the mouth, according to a criminal complaint. Banks screamed, "No, no, please don't kill me," as Arzel J. Ivory, 25, dragged her back into the building, according to the complaint. A second neighbor in the same apartment called 911. She later posted a screen shot of her calling history indicating that the call went out at 1:51 a.m. Police call log shows officers responded at 2 a.m. to the building in the 5900 block of North Sherman Boulevard, but could not locate the complaint. This usually means that the police could not find the 911 caller, and then what happens is they will leave the premises due to them circumstances. The police log also shows the contact as a generic call for police, not specifically a battery or assault contact.
And then somebody picked up the phone. At 1:51 in the morning on February 8th, 2020, a caller did not soften a single word of it. She told the operator a man was beating the hell out of this girl and that you can hear her screaming, he over there jumping on her. And she asked for police to come check on that woman right then. Now watch what happened to that call on its way through the system. The operator, Christine St. Pierre, marked it as a priority 2, a general call for police, instead of a priority 1 that requires an emergency response. And the internal investigation later found that classification was flat out wrong. It got worse from there, because the word beating never made it into the dispatch notes at all, and the address got written down wrong, so the notes sent officers looking for a building to the south, because that's what the notes told them. Officers Shahryar Salati and Nicholas Kuchta caught the assignment, and here's a detail that's going to sit with you, because they just finished up a different domestic violence call and were doing paperwork on it when this one came in. A sergeant told them to finish a warrant task first, and by the time they got officially dispatched around 2 in the morning, they lost a little more time picking up their body cameras, and they reached the complex about 5 minutes after that. Then they went looking for a building to the south, because that's what the notes told them.
They sat in their squad car with the windows down, listening, and heard nothing, and they never once called back the woman who dialed 911. They drove slowly around the complex, parked near the north entrance, waited about 10 more minutes, and at 2:35 in the morning, they left without entering a single building or speaking to a single resident.
A second neighbor in the same apartment called 911. She later posted a screen shot of her calling history indicating that the call went out at 1:51 a.m. Police call log shows officers responded at 2 a.m. to the building in the 5900 block of North Sherman Boulevard, but could not locate the complaint. This usually means that the police could not find the 911 caller, and then what happens is they will leave the premises due to them circumstances. The police log also shows the contact as a generic call for police, not specifically a battery or assault contact.
What happened inside that apartment after those officers pulled off is something Ivory himself later described to police. He said he pushed her head into the wall twice and claimed that was what made her bleed from the mouth. And when investigators eventually got in there, they found a head-sized hole in a bedroom wall.
He then went to the remaining family members' room in the house, kissed each of them on the cheek, saying he loved them and that Miss Banks requested for them to come to heaven with her. And then he strangled each one of them too, saying that he didn't want them to live without Miss Banks. His exact words were that
it was his family and that he brought them into this world and that he can take them out.
He kissed them on the cheek, told them he loved them, and that he brought them into this world so he could take them out. After that, he tried to make all 3 of them disappear. He wrapped them in air mattresses and loaded them into his car. And while he was driving around the city, he remembered that an old apartment building he used to live in had a 4-car garage, and one of those doors never locked. So he drove them to that garage near 47th and Buries, dragged them inside, and set them on fire.
Now, initially, he attempted to dismember all of their bodies, but as he was using a steak knife on Miss Banks' body, he reached a bone in her leg, and that's what caused him to stop. So what he did at that time is he took their bodies, wrapped them up in air mattresses, and then took them to his car. Now, as he was driving around in his car, he suddenly remembered that his old apartment building had a 4-car garage and that one of the doors always remained unlocked. So he then drove them there. He dragged their bodies into the garage and then he set them on fire. But the flames did not appear to be getting hot enough for him. So he went to the gas station and purchased some gasoline. He returned to the garage and he poured the gasoline over their bodies. And he stated that this caused their bodies to get very hot. So he just left the garage with their bodies in there burning and just left.
And when the flames were not doing what he wanted them to do, he drove to a gas station, bought gasoline, came back and poured it on them. Then he got in his car and drove to Memphis to start a brand new life. Back in Milwaukee, Jerica's people were calling and getting nothing. So on February 9th, they filed a missing persons report. And while they were out there searching for her, Ivory was on the phone with Milwaukee police, lying straight to their faces. During that missing persons investigation, he spoke to police by phone and told them he had come home around 1:38 a.m., that they had argued because Banks blamed him for the death of their son. And that was when she went outside during the argument. He had to coax her back inside the house. He then told them he had left to go to sleep in his truck and had no idea where Banks and the girls were, that he was out of state and would come back to Wisconsin in about 2 weeks to talk to investigators. He was buying himself 2 weeks while 3 bodies sat in a burned-out garage across town. And here is where the system failed all over again, the same way in the same week. The Amber Alert for Zanaya and Kamaria was not issued until February 15th, a full week after a mother and 2 babies vanished under circumstances everybody involved called suspicious. And it did not go out because Milwaukee police pieced it together on their own. It went out after information came in from authorities in Memphis, because on that same day, Arzell Ivory's own father walked into a police station and turned his son in, after Ivory confessed to him. On February 16, 2020, police found Jerica, Zanaya, and Kamaria in that garage, and the Amber Alert was canceled almost immediately after. Back at the apartment, a search warrant filled in the rest of the picture because a cadaver dog hit on the odor of human remains in the children's bedroom, and investigators found human blood inside a closet, damage to a bedroom wall, a missing comforter, and a napkin with droplets of blood on it.
Agony since Banks and her daughters went missing last week, but any hope they had left was taken with today's discovery. Aaron Mabin spoke with loved ones, even strangers, all grieving after these losses. Aaron?
Well, Ted, many family members had a loss for words after learning their 3 loved ones would not be coming home. A mother and her 2 young daughters found dead, but they'll forever be remembered for their kindness.
God, we thank you, Father, for the support.
United in prayer.
Look upon the father, the mother, the sister, the brother, his family.
And pain. Dozens gathered Sunday with bowed heads and broken hearts.
2 young children and a young mother to be slain like that, that's not right.
You got to be a heartless monster
to do this to someone.
Family members processing the loss of 26-year-old Amara Banks, known as Jerica.
Jerica was so sweet and kind. She would help you. If you needed a ride, she would come get you.
Most generous to her two young daughters, 5-year-old Zanaya and 4-year-old Kamaria.
Her kids were so polite. They were, they was a mama girls.
All three found dead Sunday near 47th and Burleigh.
A person that's in your life, you need to try to find out about them, because your lover, friend, or whatever could be your worst enemy.
Mika Smith is Banks' sister.
It's so heartbreaking. I don't even know what to do.
A close Milwaukee family left empty.
Not ever in my life will I ever get over this. I'll never get over somebody doing this to my niece.
Praying for healing.
That pain won't go away, but we can weep together.
Hoping justice will soon come.
She didn't deserve this. She really didn't.
Ivory was extradited from Memphis and charged in Milwaukee County with 3 counts of first-degree intentional homicide and held on a $750,000 cash bond.
The man accused of murdering a Milwaukee mother and her 2 children confesses to the crime and details his actions to try and cover it up.
Innocent babies and a mother who pleaded for her life, now gone allegedly at the hands of someone who claimed to love them. Court documents revealed the grisly confession made by Ardell Ivory. He said following the funeral of their 21-month-old son, he was fighting with his girlfriend, Amara Jerica Banks. He pushed her head into the wall a couple of times and then strangled her. He then admitted to going to the children's rooms and strangling 4-year-old Kamaria Banks and 5-year-old Zanaya Ivory. Reports say Ivory claims he drove them to a garage near 47th and Burleigh and lit the bodies on fire.
Then, after telling police everything he had done, he stood up in court on March 2, 2020 and pleaded not guilty. After that, he tried the insanity route, pursuing a not guilty by reason of mental disease or defect plea in June of 2020, and the court ordered an evaluation. On September 22, 2020, the doctor ruled that the insanity plea would not be supported and Ivory withdrew it. Every exit door closed on him, so he finally stopped fighting.
Ardell Ivory is charged in the deaths of Amara Jerica Banks and her 2 daughters, Kamaria Banks and Zanaya Ivory. The criminal complaint says Ivory killed the 3 in February of 2020 and tried hiding their bodies in a garage near 47th Street in Burleigh. Ivory has now pleaded guilty to 3 counts of first-degree intentional homicide. He will be sentenced in July.
On July 16, 2021, Ardell Ivory was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole, 3 life sentences running together.
Powerful emotions in a Milwaukee courtroom as a man gets the maximum sentence for 3 murders.
This incident has torn my family apart for months. And, I never thought anyone can be this violent and non-caring to hurt any woman or any children like that, because I feel like it's terrible. And this is not happening to anyone's family members, daughters or granddaughters or sisters or brothers. And over the months I had to deal with this, and I had a nervous breakdown. I had to go into treatment for alcohol and drug treatment. I had to go in there and get my counseling to get my mind back focused, because I almost lost it. Some nights I couldn't sleep.
And what would you like to tell the court?
I would like to tell the court that why I don't understand. Like, she was the sweetest, kindest person that you could ever meet. She wasn't even a violent person. She didn't even like to argue. Like, why my sister? And then for me to be like the last one to say goodbye to her, like that messed with my mental. I gotta deal with it every day, knowing that I took her home and I'll never see her again. Like, that hurt day by day. And then that was like my best friend. That was more of a sister to me. Like, we did everything together. And then my nieces and them on top of that, there was nothing but babies. They didn't deserve any of it. They didn't even know what was going on. And to wake them up out they sleep, to kill them, like, I don't know, like, I'm taking it day by day. This ain't something I can get over just by next week, the next month, the next year. Because I saw myself going into depression mode because I never think I would lose a sister. It's a different type of hurt from anything else. So whatever he deserved, I feel like he need life without parole. He don't, like, it's devastating to our family. It affected my family, the way how we live, the way we look at life now. And it hurt. I wake up every day crying, knowing that I wish I was there to save her, to help her. But I thank God that we're getting our justice today. And I'm here for it all.
I have to evaluate the violent or aggravated nature of the crimes of conviction. On a scale of 1 to 10, it's hard to claim that one first-degree intentional homicide is more aggravated than another. However, 3 at once is extremely aggravated in this court's opinion. There is no suggestion of any self-defense or defense of others that was involved. The degree of involvement or culpability of this defendant is undisputed, that he's the only person who committed these crimes. While he has presented himself as remorseful in court, and he did accept responsibility by entering a guilty plea here, it's this court's opinion, after studying the materials, that frankly that may have been a recognition of the reality of the situation and the overwhelming amount of evidence in this case.
I'm disgusted, sad, angry, confused, and just plain furious about being here today. My sisters, my nephew, were all taken away by a cowardly, evil monster with no regards for human life. You, and you alone, made the decision to end the lives of Baby Z, Kamaria, Zanaya, and Jerica. I said Baby Z because even my sister knew you had negligence in his death, and she was not going to ever forgive you for this. Is this why you said you brought them into this world and you take them out? How dare you be a callous, cold, and evil person to do this? You will reap what you sow in prison, I'm sure of that. Prison does not forgive like things like you. You have to watch your back every second, every minute, every hour of every day for the rest of your life. Evil is being sentenced here today, and that evil is you.
27-year-old Arzel Ivory will spend the rest of his life in prison. In February 2020, Ivory murdered Amara Banks and their 2 children, 5-year-old Zanaya Ivory and 4-year-old Kamaria Banks.
Arzel, we treated you like a son. How dare you do this to us? How dare you rip out all of our hearts?
Banks and her 2 daughters were all last seen alive February 8, 2020. Then on February 16, 2020, Ivory confessed to investigators he strangled Banks and their children, killing all 3. He then dragged the bodies into a garage near 47th and Burlight and set them on fire.
You will reap what you sow in prison, I'm sure of that. Evil is being sentenced here today, and that evil is you.
Ivory acknowledging the pain he's caused the Banks family and apologizing to the court.
I know what I did has affected the world. I know I can't change anything by what I say, but I am truly sorry and I regret everything I did.
The Banks family says they're not buying it.
I feel that he could have made a better statement than he stayed in here.
His apology really didn't mean anything to me.
Banks' sister says Ivory's sentence won't bring Banks back, but now their open wound can finally start to heal.
Well, now my family can rest, but we won't be happy. Our hearts are still broken behind this. But I'm glad our family can rest.
Prosecutors pointed to everything he did afterward: the cleaning of the scene, the lying, the getting rid of the bodies, the leaving town, and the judge said words to the effect that evil was being sentenced that day. So what happened to the people who never answered that call? The acting chief, Michael Brunson, fired both officers for failing to run a thorough response. They appealed, and in January of 2021, the Milwaukee Fire and Police Commission overturned both firings. Solati got 30 working days without pay, Kushta got 15, and both of them got their jobs back, while the 911 operator resigned. 15 days and 30 days for a mother and 2 babies in a city hundreds of miles from Dayton where the price was 160 hours. You should be seeing the pattern by now. Jerica's family did not fold into bitterness, though, and what they did instead says everything about who raised her. They took her car, the one she had named Big Red, and they gave it away. A collision center in Glendale fixed that car up for free, and the Banks family handed the keys to another mother who could not get to work without a ride.
The community, and now the family of a mother who was killed along with her children, are helping out another mother in need.
These are photos of Big Red. That's what Amara Jerica Banks named her car before she was murdered this past spring, along with her 2 daughters, Kamaria Banks and Zanaya Ivory.
It was brought to my attention by my estimator, Gina. She wanted to help the customer out.
As Banks' family began to reclaim their daughter's property, questions about their car's future started to be asked. And it was the folks at Andrews Collision Center that decided to work a miracle.
We put this all together and we were actually able to donate this back to the customer.
Thousands of dollars and countless hours of labor all led up to this moment.
It's gorgeous. Oh my God, candy apple red.
A repaired car, and the Banks family giving it away.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Just take care of it like she did. That was her car.
The recipient of the keys?
I know that she would really be, would like the fact that that her car was going to go to another mother with a child. Imani, the keys. Okay. Oh, thank you, Val.
Imani Smith, a mother who hasn't been able to go to work due to not having reliable transportation.
I'm grateful. I'm very grateful. I have my son, is things that I need to do where I need reliable transportation.
A new start for her.
At the funeral, the family spokeswoman said the thing that holds this entire story together.
A long line of cars to celebrate 3 lives cut short. Today, people showed up en masse to say goodbye to Zanaya Ivory, Kamaria Banks, and their mother, Amara Banks, who's also known as Jerica.
They loved them, so they're going to come out. They were nieces, they were grandchildren, they were the daughters.
I spoke with Antoinette Mensah, a family friend who served as the family spokesperson for the event. She says today's ceremony is a celebration of life and nothing else.
Jerica was an accomplished musician. She was a violinist. Nobody knows that based on the stuff that they tell you about right now.
Police charged Arzell Ivory in connection to the death of the 3.
There's sadness, but there's a celebration. I mean, if you were able to be in the church, you see the pictures of the accomplishments. You see the beautiful pictures of the children. There was joy.
Joy this family says they'll cherish forever.
That is 2 cases now. 2 women who told somebody, and 2 police departments that came out, looked around, and left. The 3rd one runs differently, because in the 3rd one, nobody ever called the police at all, and that turns out to be the whole problem.
Here in Fayette County Court, Ken Harden Jr. was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He'd asked for less, but the judge said that the mercy that he wanted is mercy he should have shown his wife, Carrie. A statement that is reflected in the crime scene photos Fox 5 has obtained from investigators.
The mercy he wanted is the mercy he should have shown his wife. And that is a judge talking in open court about a man who preached about God for a living. Fayetteville, Georgia, a gated community, a big, beautiful house on Merlin Court. The kind of house that makes neighbors assume everything inside it is fine.
Ken and Carrie Harden lived in a beautiful house in Fayette County. He was a minister, a street preacher. She owned what has been described as a multi-million-dollar nurse staffing company. Carrie Harden was a registered nurse as well as a business owner.
Her name was Carrie Harden, and she was the one who built everything that family had. Carrie came from St. Charles County, Missouri, born around 1984, graduating from Fort Zumwalt South High School in 2003 and got her nursing degree at St. Charles Community College, receiving her pinning on March 10, 2012. Then she went and built something real, founding Nurses Earn It Medical Staffing Group out of St. Louis, a company owned and run by nurses that places RNs, CNAs, and LPNs in hospitals across all 50 states and the U.S. territories, and the press has called it a multi-million-dollar company. She did not float to the top and disappear either, because she was still working as a staff nurse inside her own company. Her friends talk about her the way people talk about somebody who actually changed things, with her friend Chastity Adams Miller saying she was focused on the best outcomes, not just for us nurses, but for the patients as well. And her childhood best friend Alicia Allen said Carrie always wanted to improve on things. But her mother, Yvonne Smith, told the story that really tells you who she was.
Yvonne Smith told me that Carrie had once used her own college school textbook money to pay for a friend's electric bill, and when that friend couldn't pay her back, well, she's the one who worked extra shifts to make sure that she could buy her college textbooks.
Carrie's husband, Kenneth Hardin Jr., was 39, and everybody in Fayetteville knew him as a street preacher, a minister, a man who stood on curbs with a microphone and speakers, preaching to strangers about God. What people miss is that he was not just the preacher's husband on the side.
Interested in building your tithes and your offerings, but we are interested in you seeing Jesus in us, seeing him in such a way where it provokes you to change. Very recently on this corner, I preached from the subject, aren't you tired yet? You ought to be tired of seeing the community be in the way that it is. With a church on just about every corner, the homicide rate continues to rise, and still, for most of us, we do nothing. We have become immune to the killing, to the abuse, to our children.
Because he was also listed as managing partner of Carrie's staffing company, which means her success was his address, his lifestyle, and his whole identity. To the neighbors, he was a great guy. He threw a fireworks show for the neighborhood kids on the 4th of July, and that was the version of him the world got to see.
Jabril Muhammad says he would have never expected his neighbor, 39-year-old Kenneth Hardin Jr., to be accused of something like this.
He seemed like a cool dude. Like I said, he had a fireworks show down here for the kids before the 4th of July.
But behind that gate, according to Carrie's mother and her closest friends, Kenneth Hardin was controlling and manipulative, and had been for years. And there was one incident that should have ended the marriage a decade before it ever got to this. Around 2014, Kenneth allegedly broke through a bathroom window to get to Carrie, then chased her down the road with a gun. And it was never reported to police, as it only came out after she was already dead. Her own mother said Carrie hid the extent of the abuse from her, and that is the difference between this case and the other two. Aisha called 3 times, and a neighbor called for Jerica, but Carrie never called anybody. She kept it in the house, kept her business running, her sons comfortable, and quietly built herself a plan. By the summer of 2024, Carrie Hardin was planning to leave her marriage. She had already accepted a job at the John J. Pershing VA Medical Center in St. Louis, the one people call Cochrane, and she took it directly through the VA and not through her own company. She contacted a divorce attorney and was planning to go home to Missouri with her boys. Her mother laid the whole thing out.
He would later tell detectives that he learned that Carrie was leaving him. Carrie's mother, Yvonne Smith, by phone from Missouri, told me Carrie had already taken another job.
She had plans for that Monday, but she would get back to me and let me know what was going on. My daughter didn't make it to that point. And Christy said, Carrie told me that she accepted a position at the VA hospital, not even through her company, but through the VA hospital, and that she was moving back to St. Louis to get away from Ken.
She had plans for that Monday, but did not make it to that point. On Monday, August 19, 2024, she called her best friend, Alicia Allen, and asked if she and her sons could come stay with her, and that was the last day her children saw her alive. Kenneth Hardin's own confession, recorded by detectives and later released to the public, tells you how the night of August 20th started. He said they had been drinking, and he admitted he had lied to her about pouring her liquor out when he really had it stashed in his bathroom cabinet, and that he went and got it and handed it to her. He said they were celebrating a good day because a construction deal had come through. Then a fight kicked off and it settled down and she went upstairs. And then hours later she called him and said she was leaving and taking the boys with her. Nobody alive can confirm that part, and the only thing anybody knows for certain is what came next, in his own voice.
We start arguing. She telling me she gonna take the kids. I told her, you're not taking the kids. You take the kids over my dead body. You're not taking the kids. Have nothing to, like, why do you keep bringing up the kids? That's why I said, like, what do you keep bringing up the children for? They're not a part of what's going on. And when she went to grab towards her gun, I don't know that she got her hand on it, because when she did that, I snapped. And when I realized what was happening, I had emptied out that entire Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 2.0. And I don't know if it was 7 shots in there or 8, but I know that it was all empty.
He emptied the whole magazine into her, and investigators say the autopsy showed 9 gunshot wounds. 9 times, inside her own house, with her 2 sons asleep upstairs. He stood there and listened to her die. That is what years of being controlled do to a person, and if you needed one moment to understand this entire video, that is it. Carrie was dead on the sunroom floor, and 2 little boys were asleep upstairs, and Kenneth Hardin did not call 911 or an ambulance. He began to cover his tracks. In his confession, he keeps insisting over and over that he was not covering up a crime and was only protecting his sons from seeing their mother's blood. You can decide for yourself whether you believe that, but let's look at what the man actually did. He dragged her body out of the house, leaving a blood trail all the way outside, and then he tried to set her on fire. He nearly blew himself up doing it, so he grabbed a white bucket, ran to the pool in his own backyard, and used pool water to put out the fire he had set on his own wife. Then he went back in the house and spent the rest of that night cleaning blood out of the sunroom and out of the bedroom. When the sun came up, he took a shower, woke his 2 boys up, and walked them to the bus stop like it was any other Tuesday morning. He put those children on a school bus with their mother's blood still soaked into the carpet. When he came back, he stood out on his own deck and realized he could still see her body from the house, so he tried to dig a hole, found out digging is hard work, and instead covered her with debris and yard waste behind the dog kennels. And then he did something so cold it barely registers the first time you hear it. He planted a log as a marker so he could tell his father where to find her body later, which means this man was already planning his own confession while she was still warm in the ground. Then Hardin flew his own father into Georgia, picked him up from the airport, took him to eat, and put him in a hotel. He picked him back up the next morning, drove him to PNC Bank, and signed over all his assets and custody of his 2 sons. Then took him to the UPS store, and only after all of that, sitting in a van in a parking lot, did he finally tell that old man what he had done. His father broke down crying in a parking lot, and then his father did the right thing, exactly like Arzell Ivory's father did in Memphis. Sit with that for a second, because 2 of these 3 cases only broke open because a man turned in his own son. The police failed Aisha, the police failed Jerica, and in Carrie's case, the only reason anybody knew anything at all was that an old man made a phone call he never in his life wanted to make. Hardin's father called the Fayette County Sheriff's Office, and deputies rolled out to Merlin Court on August 21, 2024, while Kenneth was already gone, running west in a white Cadillac. And this next part is the one that gives me chills, because that house was covered in cameras, and Hardin could still get into that camera system remotely while he was on the run. He sat in a car hundreds of miles away, watching deputies walk across his own property in real time. What he could not outrun was a license plate reader. The dog found Carrie in Georgia in the same breath as a SWAT team put cuffs on her husband in a Louisiana motel.
Investigators are currently in Louisiana interrogating a man accused of killing his wife at their Fayetteville home.
Investigators say they found his wife's body partially burned and buried in a shallow grave.
Fayette County Sheriff Barry Babb says Hardin shot and killed his wife, 39-year-old Carrie Hardin, early Tuesday morning while his children slept.
So they went to school on Tuesday, never seen their mother.
The sheriff's office says it learned of the crime after Hardin flew his father into town and gave him his last will and testament.
He had told his father that he had shot his wife and pretty much that he was now going to be on the run.
Hardin's father called the sheriff's office, who began investigating. Babb says a license plate reader helped them track Hardin's car to a motel in Louisiana. A SWAT team there moved to take him into custody while they searched the large property for his wife's body.
I got almost basically two calls at the same time that the cadaver dog located our victim, which was buried in a very shallow grave on the back part of the property, and at the same time that the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office took him into custody without incident.
Sheriff Babb says the body was partially burned. He says Fayette County investigators got on the first flight to Louisiana Thursday morning, where they've apparently had no trouble interviewing Hardin.
He is completely cooperating to the point that I will tell you that Captain Lee, who has been an investigator at least 3 decades, said I've never had a homicide suspect want to tell us everything.
Sheriff Babb says so far the motive they've gathered from Hardin was a late-night domestic dispute mixed with heavy drinking.
Sheriff Barry Babb, a man with almost 40 years on the job, called it one of the more grisly crimes he has ever worked. And Hardin, once they had him, would not stop talking. That is the whole read on Kenneth Hardin, because he never wanted to hide. He wanted to be understood. He spent hours in that interrogation room building his case, and what a case it was. He told detectives that back in 2018 he got shot at Magic City, the Atlanta strip club, while he was out with Carrie's own family members. And he admitted the only reason they ended up at the club at all was that he was seeing a young lady who worked there. So the street preacher got shot at a strip club while he was cheating on his wife, and then spent the next 6 years framing himself as the one who was wronged, telling police the whole situation was the catalyst for most of our arguments and that Carrie hurt him first. That is what those detectives wanted to walk away understanding, not that he killed her, but that she had it coming to her. He was extradited to Georgia and charged with felony murder, concealing the death of another, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. And the sheriff revealed something that could have made this whole thing so much worse. Then, on June 23, 2025, Kenneth Hardin Jr. pleaded guilty in front of Judge Rhonda B. Cruciger in Fayette County Superior Court. And this man, this street preacher who spent his weekends telling strangers about grace, stood up in that courtroom and asked the judge for mercy. He got life without the possibility of parole, plus extra time for concealing her death and for the firearm charge, and he will die inside a Georgia prison. District Attorney Marie Broader called the sentence some measure of justice for Carrie and for everything she built. And on July 2, 2025, investigators released the crime scene photos showing the scrubbed carpet, the bullet holes, the burn pit in the backyard, the shallow grave, and the white Cadillac he ran in. Those photos are the reason nobody has to take his self-defense story seriously, because a man defending himself does not scrub a carpet, does not pour gasoline on a body, and does not plant a log as a grave marker before driving 450 miles west while watching his own security cameras from the road. His father now lives in the same house on Merlin Court with the 2 boys, which means those children are going to sleep every night inside the house where their daddy shot their mother 9 times and buried her in the backyard. Let's pull it together, because these are not 3 stories. This is one story told 3 times. Aisha Nosen called the police 3 times, filmed the threats, played the video to 2 officers on her own porch, told them straight out that the man had a gun in her basement, and she was dead within the hour. Those officers got 160 hours of suspension and some retraining, and the courts turned around and said they never had a legal duty to protect her in the first place. Jerica Banks had a neighbor scream into a 911 call at 1:51 a.m. that a man was beating her half to death, and that call got downgraded, the address got written wrong, and officers sat in a parking lot and then drove off. Those officers got 15 days and 30 days and their jobs right back. And Carrie Hardin never called anybody at all, because a decade earlier, a man chased her down a road with a gun, and nobody ever reported it. And she learned the lesson a whole lot of women learn, which is handle it yourself, get your money right, get a job in another state, and get out quietly. All three of them are dead. And the woman on that Milwaukee channel, the one who broke down while telling Jerica's story, said the truest thing anybody said in any of this. If you or somebody you love is living in this right now, the National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-7233, and they have people on the line 24 hours a day speaking more than 200 languages. Tell me in the comments which one of these 3 failures makes you the angriest. And if you made it all the way down here with me, hit subscribe, because we are nowhere near done telling these stories.